I can talk at this theoretical level about bringing Buddhism and Christianity together, but let me tell you a story. Back in 1995, my Aunt Mary was dying of cancer. She was a Roman Catholic. Aunt Mary did not have any children of her own, so she was one of those aunts that would sort of take in all the nephews and nieces under her wings. I was very close to her. She was my godmother. For many years, she lived next door to us. And when she had cancer and we knew it was terminal, we were doing like a 24-hour watch. And she was getting up sometimes in the night and wandering about. And she would go from room to room, and we were worried that maybe, she'd try to get the car keys and try to take off, because mentally she wasn't quite as with it as she had been. So we'd be on duty, and I was doing the duty at 2:30 in the morning, sitting by this lovely woman's bedside. This is my dad's sister. And so what I started to do was a Tibetan Buddhist practice called the Pawa practice. And I found this, or learned about this, in Sogyo Rinpoche's book, The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. That book had been published in 92, it's now 95. And so I'm sitting and doing this practice for my Aunt Mary, and I'm not telling her or anyone else that I'm doing this practice. This is weird Michael doing his thing. But what they recommend in this practice is that you picture a Buddha or Bodhisattva there before the dying person. So it could be Amitabha or Avalokiteshvara. But they say, if you happen to be Christian, then you might picture, Jesus or God, or if you're a Catholic, maybe Mother Mary. Well, my Aunt Mary, she was Catholic, and so I pictured Jesus. And I was picturing Jesus as she would have thought of Jesus, kind of the blue-eyed Jesus that we think of. And the way you do the practice is I'm envisioning Jesus at the foot of my Aunt Mary's bed. She's asleep in the bed. And I'm seeing him standing there. And they invite you to not just imagine, but really know that he is there. And there's enough of the spiritual in me, the mystical in me, that I can enter that space and know that Jesus is there at my Aunt Mary's bedside. And I'm picturing him smiling down at her. And I'm picturing light. This is part of the Tibetan Buddhist Pawa practice. I'm picturing a light emanating from his heart and washing over her so that she becomes just this body of light. And that any sins or bad karma or mistakes she has made, whatever you want to call it, that this is washed away by this light. And then the next part of the Pawa practice is to envision my Aunt Mary in the form of light, going up into the heart of Jesus, and the Christ welcoming her there. And I did this practice. I'm alone. It's 2:30, maybe 3 a.m. I'm alone. I'm doing this practice again and again for my Aunt Mary, and doing this visualization practice, this prayer practice, if you will. And at some point, after I'd been doing this for quite a while, I happened to turn my head back. And there, just beyond the foot of the bed, on the wall, my Aunt Mary, good Catholic that she is, has a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And those of you who know that, it's a picture of Jesus with his arms open like this, his heart exposed, and light emanating from his heart. And when I saw that, I just had goosebumps running up and down my spine. And in the moment, I thought, I have these two religious traditions. In this case, Tibetan Buddhism and Roman Catholicism. And they're both going up the mountain. And we've just hit a point where the paths cross on their way up the mountain. And I had sometimes thought of myself as a Buddhist Christian before that day. But sometimes people would say, oh, well, you can't be Buddhist and Christian at the same time. And I thought about that practice. And it couldn't have happened without Jesus. It wouldn't have worked to have a Avalokiteshvara at the foot of the bed for my Aunt Mary. And of course, it couldn't have occurred without Tibetan Buddhism. Both were necessary. It was truly a Buddhist Christian practice. And from that day in the fall of 1995, I have unhesitantly called myself a Buddhist Christian. And when Ollie and I, in 2009, when we decided to start an experiment of a spiritual community blending Buddhism and Christianity and earth-centered spirituality, I had no doubt within myself that it could be, if we could keep our egos out of the way, that it could be something of value, that it could be something that added to the good, that watered beneficial seeds. And I check on myself. One of the ways I check on myself is that sometimes when we're doing a service, I'll just envision Jesus walking in. And whatever limited understanding this human being has of who and what this Jesus is and was, I use whatever that understanding I have is and imagine him walking in and kind of looking at what we're doing. And at least so far, what I receive from him is kind of a smile and a nod. You know, you might not be doing it perfectly, but you're on the right track. You're doing well. So